Hello and happy Wednesday, Year 5 and 6. Thank you for joining me in your second English writing skill of the week. We're going to start by reviewing our learning from Monday, and then we're going to have a look at our new learning objective. We'll go through some examples together, and at the very end you'll be set a very short task for you to do at home. All you're going to need today is a piece of paper and a pencil, and then when you have finished your learning, I know that Mrs. PA and myself are very keen to see your learning so that we can give you some feedback and help you with your progress, so please share your learning on Class Dojo with us. So let's start with our review then. On Monday, our learning objective was to identify main and subordinate clauses in a sentence. And I'm really pleased with the amount of people that responded to this video and completed the worksheet that looked like this, because that was your first task. It was to complete this worksheet. And then the second thing you were asked to do was to write 3 of your own sentences and underline the subordinate clause. Now, I don't know about Year 5, but Year 6, you were certainly very cheeky on Monday because lots of you didn't write your own sentences. Tut, Year 6, we know that this is writing. So we need to do our very best to be doing a little bit of writing each week. So I'm going to ask you now, if you know that on Monday you didn't write 3 of your own sentences, I'm going to ask you to go back and have another go. Now, if you've done your science experiment this week, you'll know that our gateways is explorers, and we're all about challenging ourselves this term to be the best version of ourselves, the best learners that we can be. So please go back, make yourself and your teachers really proud. If you know you haven't done that, go back and have a go. And then you can come back to this video for today's learning. Okay, so today's learning objective is I can vary the position of a subordinate clause in a sentence. Now, I'd like Year 6 and Year 5 just to take a moment to remind yourself of what a main clause is and a subordinate clause is. I'm just going to give you a few seconds to think about that. So a main clause then contains a subject and a verb. And you'll remember that the subject is a noun or a pronoun, and the verb is, that's right, it's an action or doing word. So a main clause will contain a noun or a pronoun and a verb, and it makes sense on its own. A subordinate clause, it again contains a subject and a verb, but this time it doesn't make sense on its own. It relies on the main clause for it to make sense. Let's have a look at an example and remind ourselves. I lounged in the sun until I became too hot. So first of all, I wonder, do you know the meaning of this word, the definition of lounged? What does that word mean? You're absolutely right. If you're lounging in the sun or you lounge in the sun, it normally means that you're lying down, you're relaxing, and you're kind of sort of free of stress and worry. And you can lounge in lots of different places. You can lounge on the sofa, you can lounge on your bed, maybe in the garden. You can even lounge on your chair at school. So let's have a look at our sentence. I lounged in the sun until I became too hot. Can you spot Year 5 and Year 6, the main clause in this sentence and the subordinate clause? It's going to give you a few seconds to have a think. Shall we start with the main clause then? Hopefully you thought that I lounged in the sun is the main clause. Well, how did you know? We've got our subject, I, And we've got our verb, lounged. And it makes sense on its own. If I was to put a full stop here, the sentence would still make sense. I lounged in the sun. And hopefully you spotted that the subordinate clause is until I became too hot. Again, it has a subject, I, and it has a verb, became. But this time it doesn't make sense on its own. If this was the start of my sentence, until I became too hot, well, what happened? We need some more information to understand that subordinate clause. Now, our learning objective today is to be able to vary the position. That means change the position of the clause in our sentence. So if we have another look at this sentence, I lounged in the sun until I became too hot. I have varied the position of the subordinate clause below. Until I become too hot, I lounged in the sun. In the first sentence, the subordinate clause is on the end. In this second sentence, I've put it at the start. I've varied its position. Until I became too hot, I lounged in the sun. Now, you'll notice that I'm going to put a comma here, and I'm taking care to form my comma accurately. When we do a comma, we need a sort of full stop at the top and then a tail flick. And our tail flick always goes in this direction. Now, if we were writing on a line, the comma will sit on the line with the tail flicking again in this direction. Let's go back to our sentence. Why do you think I put the comma here? You're absolutely right, year 5 and 6. I've placed the comma after the subordinate clause. Until I became too hot, comma, I lounged in the sun. We've got our subordinate clause and our main clause separated by a comma. Let's have a look at another example then. I would like to travel a lot when I'm older. Can you spot the subordinate clause in this sentence? Excellent. When I am older. And I'm going to vary its position again now. Can you guess what I'm going to do? So I've varied the position by putting the subordinate clause at the start of the sentence. When I am older, I would like to travel a lot. Now, what have I missed out of that second sentence, year 6? And year 5, what do I need to remember to put between the subordinate clause and the main clause? Well remembered, we need a comma to separate the two clauses. Let's have a look at another example. You can learn about famous scientists if you visit the Science Museum. So again, our subordinate clause comes at the end of this sentence. How could I vary its position? Let's have a look. So this time, where have I put the subordinate clause? Well spotted. I've moved the subordinate clause to the beginning of the sentence. And some of you may have already spotted that I need the comma after the subordinate clause. If you visit the Science Museum, you can learn about famous scientists. Okay, we're going to have a think about now then year 5 and 6, some success criteria to help us with our writing today. You may have noticed that when the sentence starts with a main clause, then I don't have to include something. As an example here for you to have a look at, you can learn about famous scientists if you visit the Science Museum. So when my sentence starts with a main clause, I don't need a comma. However, when the sentence starts with a subordinate clause, what do I need to use? I need to use a comma to separate the clauses. Okay, now I've just spotted year 5 and year 6 that I need to use a comma in my success criteria. When is a subordinate conjunction, and I've got a subordinate clause here. When this sentence starts with a main clause, comma, I don't need a comma. When the sentence starts with a subordinate clause, I need to use a comma. And I've put some examples there to help you with your writing today. Now, your task year 5 and 6, you have 2 options, and I really do trust you now to pick the option that is going to challenge you. Think back to what I said at the start of the video about our gateway being all about challenging ourselves, making sure that we're pushing ourselves to be the best learners possible. So here are your 2 options. Write 3 sentences varying the position of the subordinate clause. Punctuate your sentence accurately. Option number 2, write a short paragraph. Use subordinate clauses in your writing and vary their position in the sentences. Punctuate your sentences accurately. So you have a choice year 5 or year 6 if you do option 1 or option 2. Okay, you've got a success criteria to help you, and you also have here a sort of a word bank of subordinate conjunctions that you can use to help you write your subordinate clauses. Now, I've also given you here some inspiration. So if you're not sure what to write about, here are 2 pictures that you could use. You don't have to use them, but they might spark some ideas of what you could write about today, either for your 3 sentences or your paragraph. And again, at the bottom here, I've put some examples of subordinate clauses, subordinate conjunctions to help you write your clauses. Now, as always, year 5 and year 6, do your best, give it a go. Even if you only end up writing 1 sentence, we are very proud of you. Please share your learning with us on Class Dojo so that we can give you some feedback and support and help you to make your progress with your learning. Right, have a lovely Wednesday, everybody, and I'll be back again on Friday with another writing skill.